Kyle, do you think that the recording industry, in its struggle to preserve the value in music via physical media, has prevented new value from being created?
It's a tricky scenario, right? I mean, it's sort of like the innovator's dilemma. You have these products that you've spent years of investing into the market for, and there's sort of this mentality of we've created these products, these CDs, and this is the means through which we've made our music available to fans, and you ought to want this. Similarly, when we put the digital downloads into the market, it's sort of, we made these products, they're available as downloads, you ought to want this. This is what we've created for you, and this is how we determine that you should consume it. And anything sort of outside of those boundaries is piracy. Then, it goes the step beyond that, it says, we've now made this available as streaming music, it's $10 a month, you ought to want this, this is unlimited access to all the music you can. But what's funny sort of about this progression of these business models is that they're almost too late. Like we're sitting in 2012, and just this past year, the first freemium music subscription service came to the US, which is Spotify. And the subscription music model has been around since the early 2000s with Rhapsody, where for only the $10 a month you could gain access to the music, and they gave like a 7-day trial. But when you think of actually aligning sort of the business model with the consumer behavior that's in the market, that free tier should have been there 3 to 4 years ago, if not more. And it's all right, and it's understandable that we're trying to protect revenue streams, and that by cannibalizing this value too much, they risk putting themselves out of business. But when sort of approaching that distinction to the market of you ought to want this, you're not really operating like a startup anymore. You're operating like a company that thinks they know what other people ought to want. If you're a startup, which is sort of the model that we look at bands today, you are making a product for an audience. And if they don't want that product, then you have failed as a startup, much like any other startup. And there's sort of no reason to dictate terms to your audience, because you should be playing the role of a startup and researching your audience and creating valuable, meaningful products that they want to consume, not that they ought to want.
Interesting. Okay. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about, because you've written extensively about this as well, is how you feel the increased access that music culture demands from artists has affected the artist-fan relationship. Because that's something new.
The artist-fan relationship has certainly evolved at a very rapid clip, especially since when I was growing up. When I was younger, I was a very huge Linkin Park fan, and you see them on MTV, you hear their songs on radio, and there really is this notion that Linkin Park exists in the cloud somewhere, that they're not real people, and that you as a fan have no possible connection to them.
Other than the concerts or
other than the concerts, other than the sort of venues that are available. And a level of mystery below that would have been the early days of fan mail, right? Mm-hmm. Where you would send fan mail and messages off to an address to nowhere with, under no certain terms did you ever believe the Rolling Stones would read your mail. But now, sort of with the evolution of MySpace culture and the ability to gain more instant access to artists, the expectations that fans have of artists have definitely shifted, and there's a certain new distinction that fans see, is that if I send a message to you, I expect a connection back. If I want a closer relationship with you, there should be tools and or means for me to sort of establish that connection. And in the age of the internet, where bands are increasingly relying on their relationships with fans to fund and drive their careers, it creates this sort of very interesting dynamic where you want to keep the audience at a certain distance and maintain a certain degree of that mysterious presence, But at the same time, we live in this age of Wikipedia where within one click, the fan already knows everything that they ever want to know about your career and everything you've done, everything that's ever been written about you. So there's this false, you used to have to connect those dots via Rolling Stone articles and album liner notes and little blurbs on radio, and you would sort of gain this ecosystem of ideas about what an artist was and be very creative in how you thought that they were and who you wanted them to be. But in this age where you sort of see them as real people and have this abundance of information about them, you actually start gaining a sense of who they really are and have less sort of room to creatively fill in the dots yourself.
Kyle, you've talked a lot about effort as it relates to value, and I was wondering if we can get your feelings on that. It's a very, very interesting concept, especially in the era that we live in today.
Totally. So I read a book called The Upside of Irrationality by Dan Ariely, and in the book he talks about how effort impacts value, that the amount of effort we put into something heightens our sense of value of how much we value that product. For instance, when you build a bookshelf from IKEA, the act of building that bookshelf and putting in the time to build it sort of causes this relationship to form, this heightened sense of value, where you actually might value that bookshelf at a higher value than one that you just bought completed from the store. And as I sort of read that, I sort of realized that in the age of music subscription services, there's this challenge, this how do we balance effortlessness and investment? On one hand, you want to make it really easy for a fan when they log into your subscription service to allow them to say, I'm already a fan of Adele, Lady Gaga, and Pink. Let me add those artists directly to my collection as quickly as possible, and don't make me put in the work. I don't want to have to search every artist and gradually add them. So there's sort of that distinction. And on the other side of that, you don't want to ask so much of them that they get turned away. But what you find if you think about a music collection in those terms, especially in the early days of subscription music, if you put a fan in front of this sort of collage of artists and said, just click on these tiles and they'll be automatically added to your collection, the threshold of effort that you're asking from them is very, very low. When the sort of hopeful end result is that over time, they'll gradually add albums to their collection and gradually grow this attachment to them, where the cost of paying $10 a month is actually lower than the cost of losing those albums, feeling like you're going to lose them. It's almost like when you get a couch from Rent-A-Center and you bring it home with the intentions, and I'm only going to use it for Super Bowl Sunday, and then I'm going to take it back. But you have this couch, you're sitting in it, you're enjoying it, and over time you sort of start to take ownership of this couch, and the sort of emotional connection, the bond that you have with it becomes stronger than the cost of keeping it.
Okay.
And the sense of losing it much stronger than the money it would take to buy it.
Okay. Thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it very much.
Not a problem.